Caravaggio painted his own death, not symbolically, but quite literally, his severed head dripping with blood, held up by a young man who is also him, only younger. This isn't just a biblical scene, as most people assume. It's a small, dark painting, but so brutally honest that it feels more like a scream than a work of art. Most people look at it and think it's just David and Goliath, but if you pause for a moment, if you zoom in, you'll notice something strange in their expressions, something deeply human. Caravaggio painted himself twice, and on the edge of the sword, he inscribed a message almost no one notices, a message to the Pope, a message to God, a message to himself. But why did Caravaggio paint his own death? What is the psychological story behind this painting? Before diving into the work itself, it's worth understanding where Caravaggio was in his life when he created it, because it certainly wasn't a good moment. By that time, Caravaggio had been exiled from Rome for several years. He had killed a man in a fight, apparently over a rather trivial argument, and there was a bounty on his head. Returning meant risking arrest, or worse. So he spent his final years drifting from place to place. Naples, Sicily, Malta, always with one foot in the shadows. And it was in that context that he painted this work. David with the Head of Goliath was not a typical religious commission like many of his earlier pieces. This one was personal. Caravaggio painted it and sent it to Cardinal Scipione Borghese, a powerful Vatican figure who had the authority to grant him a papal pardon. In other words, it was a kind of peace offering. Instead of painting a heroic scene, Caravaggio cast himself as the defeated. He used his own face for the severed head of Goliath, and a young man, possibly also a self-portrait in his youth, as David. And the strangest part, even though it seemed like the pardon might come, Caravaggio never made it back to Rome. He died beforehand, under mysterious circumstances, on the coast of Tuscany. Now that we understand why Caravaggio created this work, it's worth taking a closer look at the figures, because beyond the biblical story, what we really have here is a kind of double portrait, a young Caravaggio and an older Caravaggio, one holding the head of the other. Let's start with David. He's not the typical victorious hero we see in other versions of this tale. He's not raising a sword or celebrating his triumph. Quite the opposite. He's calm, composed. And if you look closely, he even seems a little sad. David here isn't a symbol of virtue. He has a raw, almost streetwise quality, as if he had grown up in the same world Caravaggio did, in the streets of Rome, among fights, impulses, and constant challenges. He's young, strong, determined, but he doesn't seem proud of what he's just done. That ambiguity is key. Now let's look at Goliath. His face is that of a man beaten down by life, quite literally defeated. His mouth hangs open, his eyes are lifeless, his expression hollow. But the most important detail, it's Caravaggio. No longer the rebellious youth, but the adult weighed down by guilt, wounds, and failure. His severed head doesn't represent a fallen giant struck down by God's chosen one. It represents a man crushed by the consequences of his own past. And that's where the piece becomes deeply personal, because we're not witnessing a victory, we're witnessing an inner reckoning, a young man staring at the cost of his actions, and an older man who seems to be paying the price for having once been that youth. The real question is there regret or just resignation? Is David mourning what he's done or accepting that it was inevitable? That's the power of this image. It leaves us in that uncomfortable middle ground where there are no clear answers, only a flood of complex emotions. But beyond the story it depicts, this piece is a perfect example of Caravaggio's technical mastery. And it's not just about skill. Every element of the composition is designed to make us look exactly where he wants us to look, and feel exactly what he wants us to feel. The first thing that stands out is his use of extreme chiaroscuro, what we now call tenebrism. The background is pitch black, as if the figures were floating in darkness. There's no landscape, no setting, no distractions, just human forms emerging from the shadows. And within that darkness, the light falls precisely where it matters most, on David's face and Goliath's severed head. Nothing else. This creates a sharp visual tension. It's as if Caravaggio turns on an emotional spotlight for that exact moment. Everything else vanishes. The light isn't there to beautify, it's there to expose. Then there's the composition itself, which is also carefully calculated. If you trace a line from David's face, down his arm, through the sword, and toward Goliath's head, you get a diagonal that cuts across the entire canvas. This line guides our eye naturally, but it also suggests a fall, a kind of visual descent from youth to punishment, from the living face to the dead one. And just when you think you've seen it all, there's one more detail, one of those almost invisible elements that most people miss, but it has the power to completely shift the meaning of the entire piece. But before we continue, if you're enjoying this analysis, remember that you can find this artwork and many more in our catalogue. On our website, you'll find faithful reproductions ready to hang with free worldwide shipping. We also offer phone cases so you can protect your device while carrying a piece of art with you wherever you go. By purchasing from the store, you're helping me continue creating videos like this one, and you're also getting a work of art that will last a lifetime. Thanks so much to everyone who has supported this project. I've left the link in the description so you can place your order. Now then, back to the piece. If we look closely at the blade of the sword David is holding, we can see some letters engraved, H-A-S-O-S. No explanation, and for a long time, many dismissed it as a name, a mark, or simple decoration, but it's none of those things. It's a Latin abbreviation, Humilitas Occidit Superbium, which means humility kills pride. It's a powerful phrase, but also a deliberate one. Think about it. Who holds the sword? The young man. Who is the defeated, the proud older man? And who orchestrated all of this? Caravaggio, a man accused, rejected, trying to make peace with his past. So the question becomes, who was that message for? It could have been directed at Cardinal Borghese, a subtle way of saying, I've changed, I'm not the same, let me come back. But it may also have been for himself, as if he painted that phrase to convince himself or to punish himself, as if he were trying to justify that the impulsive, prideful version of his younger self needed to be destroyed to make way for something else. Either way, that inscription transforms the scene. It's no longer just a biblical execution, it's a statement of principle, or a confession of regret, and it's probably the most direct message Caravaggio ever embedded in a work. I'd love to hear your interpretation of this painting. Do you think Caravaggio was painting his remorse, his punishment, or was he simply saying goodbye to himself? I'd really love to read what you see in this work. Thank you for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next video.